What's poppin', y'all? Welcome back to I Do It Myself. If this is your first time here and you like what you're hearing and you seeing, make sure you like the video, subscribe so you can keep up to date with what we got going on. Today we talking about Nas and Jim Jones, and this is the last video I'm going to do on this because I think it's gone a little bit too far. And Nas kind of responded. He didn't literally respond, you know what I'm saying? But actions speak louder than words, and we're going to talk about that later. But Jim Jones had a moment, and he went up to the Bag Fuel podcast. Shouts out to Heineken. Shouts out to Esso. And they had DJ Clue as well. I know he's not a frequent member on there, but he collaborates with them a lot. And he said some things. Now, the things that Jim said, I was a little bit disappointed because watching Bag Fuel, you know, Bag Fuel, one of them conversational podcasts where it's like, it's not conventional. It's not formal. It's some block stuff. You know what I mean? It's like talking on the block. You got Esso, who's from Queens. You got Clue, who's from Queens. And you got Heineken. I think Heineken's from Brooklyn. But let's just focus on Queens for a second. So we had Jim Jones up there. And two guys from Queens, they didn't challenge Jim Jones' points. I think it's cool to let people vent, to let people talk, especially on your platform, because of course it's viral. You know what I mean? Shouts out to them. They stay consistent at what they do. They go viral a lot. You know what I'm saying? But at the point, where do we have the conversation that's just straight up and down honest about what Nas means to hip hop? Beyond just Queens, but specifically because it's two Queens dudes up there. But just hip hop in general. You know what I'm saying? I think that this conversation is going a little bit too far. I think that this conversation has gotten, it's just confusing. I think that, well, I'm happy at the point that Jim thinks highly of himself because I witnessed with my own two eyes, Jim teach himself how to record. And be in my office when I was working at Rockefeller and put a jacket over his head to make a booth, put the mic there and rap over a beat that ended up being Cam's Get 'Em Girls. You know what I'm saying? So I seen Jim put work in. I seen Jim put a lot of work in. And it's difficult when you coming out of New York, especially when you dealing with the streets and you dealing with, you know, the music industry and all types of stuff that's happening in between. But that's not what we talking about. We talking about what each individual artist means to hip hop and who they put on for and what they influence. And to hear that Nas, I mean, Heineken was like, he's what has he done was crazy. Was really crazy. Let's watch a clip. Let's watch a clip and then we're gonna come back and talk about it though.
Whatever narrative you want to paint, you still got to listen to me talking to you right now in 2025. What I did for Nas probably never been done for him in his life. He's never been that viral at all, ever. Ever. He's never been talked about like this ever in his life.
Now, has Nas reached out to you?
You did. The last time he was in some shit like this where people were comparing is when him and Jay was beating on him.
Say that.
You heard? You did? Like, and I don't want to talk about other people's career, but let's just get to the
Have you spoken
semantics
to
of
Nas
it.
since the whole thing?
Nas.
Okay.
I don't know Nas to have a conversation with him. You don't have a conversation, we can have that too and shit like that. You dig? Like, I don't really care
One thing I
about
did see you do, I've seen you do this in Say Less.
Which I feel is extremely ridiculous. That was crazy. That was crazy and nobody challenged the point. So Nas has only been this talked about because of his beef with Jay-Z in 2001. Takeover, Blueprint, Ether, Stillmatic was 2001. And Nas hasn't been talked about this much since then. What Jim has done for Nas. Listen, let's keep it 1,000. There's nothing that Jim could do for Nas. There's nothing that Jim could do for Nas. And I mean that with all due respect. There's nothing that Jim could do for Nas to make him relevant. Nas's Illmatic is regarded as one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. Just that alone. And we talking about something that's 31 years old this year, right? Now, let's talk about this golden era. Because I think people confuse the golden era for the 90s all the time. So nobody was going to bring up the point of Nas making Godson, Nas making Distant Relatives, Nas making Life is Good, where he goes through the whole breakup with Khalees and has her you know what I mean, has her dress on the front of the album cover, how he makes a song like Daughters, how big that album was when it came out. Nobody's going to talk about none of that. Nobody's going to mention nothing that Nas has done as an artist. Like, are we dead serious? So Nas hasn't done any viral. I once was told a story, I think Jadakiss said this story one time. He said, I think they was in Atlanta and they was in a club and Nas was just sitting there, right? And he had his head down. And then he said, man, fuck all this, man. He got up. He said he dug in his pockets. He had two, like, you know how they be having the money phones? He had two. He took it and just threw it into the crowd. And Kiss was like, he was looking at him like he was crazy. And we talking about viral. Nas is a person who battled, you know what I mean, with losing his mom. And it wasn't a public thing. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a public thing, but everybody, I'm still fortunate enough to have my mom, but anybody who's lost a parent knows the pain of that. Viral. Nas, who has like lost tapes, viral. If Nas had to bring up all the plaques he's gotten just off features alone, I think that Nas has gotten more feature plaques for what he's done on other people's work than the average artist has done in their own bodies of work as far as their careers. Nas, who wrote Getting Jiggy With It for Will Smith. All right, bet. Nobody's not going to challenge nothing. Like, nobody's going to ask the question like, yo, Jim, I hear you, bro. Like, I hear what you're saying. I understand that you're passionate. I understand that you think that you know what I mean, you're great and you doing your thing. And you've been doing your thing consistently for a long time because you don't try to get into other people's spaces and you stay within your own and you've built a lane for yourself and you've always been able to pull up while you're climbing other independent artists, whether that's Bird Gang or Bird Gang 2.0, the Stack Bundles, the Max B's, and not just the artists that was signed to you or work with you, other artists and other, like, Jim is an artist that almost every city somebody from their hood got one feature with them. Salute all of that. But we talking about Nas and his influence. His influence only regulated the clothing and how niggas dress? Is influence only regulated to how you handle yourself during adversity? Like, are we using words as they define, or are we just moving the goalpost for whatever said part we want to win in the argument? Or is there an argument at all?
First lady with you, man. You've been going viral, man.
AKA the marketing genius.
As we supposed to.
No doubt.
I seen a lot of things take a spike. Now all equals $1. That's what we trying to make out here.
You made a comparison with you and Nas, man. Everybody was talking about it. Now, why out of everybody you picked Nas, bro?
I didn't do it.
They asked him.
No,
they asked him a question, didn't
I
they?
didn't do it.
What happened was these dudes out of Atlanta, Direct and Rain, they had spoken about Jimmy and Nas's name. And then that spiraled into Joe and Jada, and it took a whole life of its own, man.
But I said, although he asked him the question, it's like people don't know that the question was answered and this was brewing up on the net before it was even spoke about.
When I listen to what Jimmy said, all the points he's given based on the fashion, based on how the mixtapes ran, based on the influence. If we take Nas, aside from lyricism, what else does he influence?
He sold a lot of records.
Okay, yeah. So selling records is influential in what?
In a whole lot of
I
shit.
just don't think you can compare
It's two different
the
things.
golden era when hip-hop was just getting brewing. Like, when hip-hop was just getting brewing, that's when Biggie, Nas, and Jay was, like, really, like...
Okay.
And they also were spending millions of dollars on marketing money
different.
that even if an artist went platinum, he still didn't recoup.
I ain't gonna lie, Heineken. I can't believe you said that selling records is influential in what? We talking about hip-hop, man. Like, we're not talking about, like... And even if you had to go to pop, man, like, if you had to... Selling records is a metric of your music, right? When you make music and people buy it a lot, means they like your music or whatever music you're talking about. Now, we're not talking about a person, we actually talking about a person who's gotten flack for not having the hits like other artists. Does he have hits? Absolutely. Absolutely. But we're talking about a person who went against the grain when the shiny suits was coming out. And even go back to Hate Me Now. Nas got flagged for the Hate Me Now video with him and Diddy. You know what I'm saying? For challenging the norms, like for doing shit that the whole Jesus walking bearing the cross situation. What has he done? Like, we talking about not like, I can't even believe that we having this conversation, but let's continue.
Market in New York was add something new, and that was doing your own shit. Independent records, signed to an independent label in the beginning. I'm still an independent artist right now.
You know what I'm saying?
But do you think this way because you was a part of the Dipset and because you was a part of a group and maybe Nas just been solo, people take credit from being inside a group and not being solo from the beginning?
Nah, I don't think it got nothing to do with that. Like, whatever happened and when we did before, that was just us being combative and people just trying. I mean, but now it's just like I'm where I'm at. I'm at the apex of what I do. You heard? So I'm talking about currently. You heard? Currently, nobody from my era really want to get busy or go and get into the booth with me right now. Currently, this is a fact, Jack. You heard? If not, they would have stood up a long time ago and holler at me. You dig? But this is where I'm at with it. My competitive nature brings me here. And then if we go back for the last few years, and the albums and the music that I've been dropping has been phenomenal. And if you want to put that up against anybody's albums that they dropped from my era, I think that
We forget about the N album. How Nas hasn't been talked about. I mean, yo, listen, let's keep it 1,000. This is just crazy at this point. That's why I don't think we should have any more conversations about it, because it's just, I can't even say it's apples and oranges. You know what I'm saying? I can't even say it's apples and oranges in what we comparing. We talking about influence and we talking about hip hop, and we talking about who's the bigger artist. Nas is one of the most important artists in all of hip hop, not just New York. You know what I'm saying? But back to Viral, right? Or back to these albums, these recent albums. Nas got with Hit Boy, and he dropped 6 albums. King's Disease 1 through 3, Magic 1 through 3. King's Disease won a Grammy. Prior to Nas winning the Grammy, I got an opportunity to talk to Nas and ask him about how he felt by being snubbed during his career. Achieve so many things in your career, but one of those things is not winning a Grammy. And like with social media, you always see like, how did you not win one, or Snoop? I want to know, like, does that even bother you, or are you more concerned with when you create the body of work, just getting it out there to the masses so people can consume it, or is that something that ever like kind of bothered you a bit?
It had to bother me early on, when the first time I was nominated. I don't know really, because I heard somebody tell me that I was nominated for Grammy. I was in the studio and I was like, he was like, you was acting like you didn't even know. I knew, but I was still working. And that was the early 90s. And you know, you want to touch all them areas. You want to touch all of that. But at the same,
I mean, I was so bad at asking questions back then. And that was only a couple years ago. I feel like I was trash, like super trash at asking questions. But that's just a testament to that whole viral conversation about like what matters, right? Now, a Grammy is another metric or another, platform, award platform to measure how people look at your albums or what they judge by them. I think that when King's Disease came out, we were all excited because it had been a minute since Nas had put something out that we all were into. When he did that EP with Kanye, I think like that was to me like one of the snubs in his career, right? But everybody has their dips in their career when it comes to albums. I think that like when that one came out, we thought it was gonna be good because it was Kanye, but it was weird, right? But King's Disease and going and working with a West Coast producer, them unlocking something that hadn't been unlocked in Nas in a minute. I would say that the influence that had was for a lot of older artists to see that they could still do it on the highest level. Now, yeah, Grammys is wrapped up in politics and favoritism and a lot of different things, but generally, everybody who heard the first King Disease really liked that album. You know what I'm saying? I remember me talking about it on Twitter, and Joe Budden said something to me, and he was like, yo, I don't know what this shit is, but I love it. Because it felt good. It felt like, you know what I mean? Like he had gotten something lifted again. And I think that that's what Nas has been able to do in his career over time, is be able to lift. Like every time people have doubted him, he's been able to like bounce back from that. But I can't subscribe to them saying that this is the most relevant that Nas has been since Ether. Like that's ridiculous, man. Like that's ridiculous. And then even with Jim saying, you know, regarding being an independent artist, do we not give Nas credit for starting Mass Appeal, an independent label? An independent label who was once a marketing company, Decon, right? A magazine. You know, they was doing marketing and advertising and all of that, and transition that into a record label who's put out legacy acts like a Ghostface Killer. You know what I'm saying? Who he signed himself, Nas signed himself to his label, and all of these things that fell, you know, these 6 albums that came out, they fell upon his umbrella. Do we not salute that level of independence by him doing it on, you know, you get what I'm saying? You feel me? Like, it's just, this shit is confusing. But let's talk about Nas's response. So this is kind of like full circle. What I say by full circle is, do y'all remember the Street Dreams video? And how Nas basically flipped the concept of the movie Casino. He had one of the actors in there with him. You know what I'm saying? He flipped the whole concept of him being Sam Rothstein and him doing Casino. Well, Nas announced that he's bringing a casino to Queens.
The future is not something you wait for. It's something you build. It lives in the hands of the doers, the dreamers, the people who refuse to stand still. Resorts World is more than a casino. It's energy, it's opportunity, it's hope for the borough. A second chance for some, a first step for many. It's where community gathers, not just to win, but to build a future once imagined. This isn't just business, this is legacy. And now, it's time to invest in us. Because the future doesn't ask for permission, it moves with purpose. From our chairman to our newest employee, we're committed to Queens. And in Queens, the future is now.
Jay-Z once said, you could bullshit with rap if you want. Nas has gotten flack his whole career for his business acumen, how he wasn't on Jay-Z's level when it came to business. In the past 15 years, we've seen that shift. From him being an investor in Lyft, to Sweet Chick, to I believe he owns a cigar bar in China, all types of stuff that you would never think of. Salute to his team. From his record labels to, you know, all types of things he does. He still tours. And to see something like this is the epitome of where your influence could take you. To see something like this is the evolution of the projects, being on the block, growing from, you know, being an artist that was just regional to being international, going from somebody who was just a rapper to a businessman. I think that we all aspire to have some better shit than what we started with, and that's influence. When I see this, that's what I see when we talking about influence. If that don't influence you to get up off your ass and do something different, I don't know, maybe you just like being on the block. This is I Do It Myself. For the ones that rock with me, you know how we do. And for the ones that don't, eventually you will. I catch you on the next one. Peace.